On World News tonight, leadership in trouble. Thailand's Prime Minister has been suspended after a hearing on his term limits. Tonight, we bring you the latest. Turbulent economics. South Korea pushes interest rates for the fourth time in an attempt to curb inflation. Meanwhile, France prepares itself to face difficult times ahead. Medical breakthrough. Fighting alcoholism might get so much easier if medicine takes the lead. Tonight, we take you through the latest discoveries. And Parisian felines, a definite visit for all cat lovers if you are planning a visit to France.
This is Derana World News Tonight. Reporting from Colombo, here's Danilu Witanawasam.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us on World News. We start off today's news bulletin from Thailand. Thailand's Constitutional Court suspended Prime Minister Prayut from official duties after deciding to hear a petition seeking review of his legally mandated 8-year term limit. The petition by the main opposition party argued that Prayut's time spent as head of a military junta after he staged a coup when he was army chief in 2014 should count towards his constitutionally stipulated 8-year term. Though Prayut could be restored to his position when the court makes its ruling, the surprise suspension threw Thai politics into confusion. The Prime Minister has 15 days to respond. The court told in a media statement that adding that a panel of judges ruled 5-4 in favor of his suspension. But supporters of the suspended Prime Minister say that his term began in 2017 when Thailand's constitution and term limits were first introduced, while others say it began in 2019 upon his election win. For the first time in history, South Korea's central bank has delivered a fourth straight rate hike. The Bank of Korea raised the key policy interest rate by a quarter percentage point, bringing it to 2.5%. The move is an effort to rein in soaring inflation and prevent capital outflows.
For the first time ever, the Bank of Korea has adjusted the interest rate upward 4 times in 4 straight meetings. The Bank of Korea's monetary policy meeting on Thursday decided to hike its key interest rate to 2.5%, up a quarter percentage point. The central bank previously took a 50 basis point increase in July, the so-called Big Step, which was the largest single increase by the Bank of Korea since it implemented interest rates as its primary policy tool in 1999. It also raised its key interest rate by 25 basis points both in May and in April. The government has been pursuing a tighter monetary policy since August last year amid growing global inflationary pressure. One of the main reasons for Thursday's decision was the need to rein in the country's inflation, which is running at a near 24-year high. The bank is also seeing faster inflation this year with an inflation rate forecast of 5.2%, the highest forecast since 1998. The decision was also likely made to help prevent capital outflows from South Korea as it puts the country's interest rates on par with the U.S. With aggressive rate hikes in the U.S., South Korea's currency has dropped to a 13-year low against the dollar in recent days, to a level not seen since the aftermath of the global financial crisis. The Bank of Korea also said the country's economic growth this year is projected at 2.6%. But that projection is 0.1 percentage points lower than the forecast made in May as the country's exports have slowed due to the weakening global economy.
Over to the primaries in the United States, a round of primary elections has cemented the political trends that have been taking place in the United States this year, with former President Donald Trump tightening his grip on the Republican Party and Democrats making abortion a central issue to their campaigns. Voters in New York, Florida and Oklahoma cast their ballots less than 3 months before the general midterm elections in November that will decide the makeup of Congress for the following 2 years.
Tonight, what may be the strongest evidence yet that following the Supreme Court's reversal of Roe v. Wade, Democrats are benefiting from a surge of new energy that's translating into increased turnout. Overnight, an upset in upstate New York.
I honestly can't believe it. I cannot believe it.
Democrat Pat Ryan pulling off a special election win in a closely watched swing district that voted for Presidents Obama, then Trump, then Biden. While his Republican opponent, Mark Molinaro, leaned into GOP messaging on inflation and crime, Ryan remained laser-focused on abortion rights. Still, Democrats are also facing their own internal duels, intensified by redistricting. In New York, Jerry Nadler cruising past longtime Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. in a redrawn district that forced the two committee chairs to battle for a single seat. And other results may impact the race for the White House. In Florida, Ron DeSantis, who's believed to be eyeing a 2024 presidential bid, will first have to defeat former Republican governor turned Democratic Congressman Charlie Crist to keep leading that state. But with DeSantis remaining popular in Florida, to win, Crist will have to pick off moderate votes.
Now, rescues were underway and streets were covered with water after heavy rainfall in parts of Mississippi. Flash flood emergency warnings were issued by the National Weather Service for several locations, including Jackson, the state capital.
Tonight, in parts of central Mississippi, the scenes are dire. A desperate evacuation. Dozens of elderly residents rushed from a nursing home as floodwaters rush in.
We do have full saturation of the ground, so we knew we might have some flash flooding.
So far, more than 100 rescues across parts of central Mississippi, including this daycare center in Florence, where dozens of children and employees were rushed to safety. The images are even more striking from above. Cars, homes, entire neighborhoods underwater.
It's really bad. Like, literally, it's flooding.
The water so powerful it forced part of a train off the tracks. Tonight, Jackson is the latest city in a string of historic flash flooding events over the past month. The rain at times was fast and furious. Some places seeing as many as 12 inches just since this morning, with much of it falling in the span of 3 hours and more on the way. It is the same deadly system that has made its way across the country, picking up steam as it moved to the east. First flooding parts of Arizona, then dumping historic rainfall on Dallas, claiming at least one life in the process. Tonight, more than 5 million people remain under flood watch, with that threat extending across parts of the southeast. And as the rain continues to fall, at least 4 states are bracing for another dangerous night ahead.
Over to the conflict in Ukraine. Ukraine marked 31 years since its independence from Moscow-dominated Soviet rule. In the midst of the celebration, a Russian missile attack killed 22 civilians and set a passenger train on the fire in eastern Ukraine.
A Russian missile strike on a railway station caused more deaths and injuries as Ukraine marked its Independence Day. According to the president's office, at least 22 people were killed and dozens more were wounded. 4 train carriages were hit at Chaplin Station, a town which lies around 110 kilometres west of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. The country had been bracing itself for especially heavy attacks on the national holiday that commemorates Ukraine's independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. Wednesday also marks the 6th month point in the war. While there were no large public gatherings, Zelensky used part of the day to present awards to Ukrainian soldiers for their service to the nation. Some medals were awarded to fallen soldiers posthumously, with family members collecting them from the president on behalf of their loved ones.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. Now, addressing the first cabinet meeting since the summer break, Prime Minister Emmanuel Macron, tanned but sounding solemn, said the world faced the end of easy abundance of goods and resources and of a certain carefreeness.
For the French government, the summer break is over and it's time to get back to work. There's a long list of issues to tackle and policies to push through this coming autumn. First among them, the environment. After a summer of record-breaking drought, devastating forest fires and deadly storms, the effects of climate change are all too clear. And the French Environment Ministry is working on an extensive package to further shift away from fossil fuels and move towards renewables. Also, France is facing a winter of potential energy shortages, amidst the threat that Russia could cut its gas exports to Europe over the war in Ukraine. This summer, Emmanuel Macron warned of difficult months to come and pleaded for energy sobriety or restraint. Another top priority, tackling inflation and unemployment with an upcoming reform of benefits. These are hot-button issues, along with pension reforms. Already a multi-sector strike is expected September 29th. But Macron isn't only facing the challenge of protests. He's also looking at tricky negotiations to pass his budget in the National Assembly. Without an absolute majority and a highly vocal opposition, the Macron administration may have to push through by force its bills and its budget. And that scenario is short a while at Parliament, which returns to work October 3rd.
Now, Angolans started casting ballots yesterday in what was expected to be the most competitive vote in their country's democratic history, with incumbent President João Lourenço squaring up against charismatic opposition leader Alberto Costa Jr.
Lining up to cast their ballots, Angolans expressed a sense of duty to vote in the most contested race since the end of the country's civil war, a showdown between two parties that fought on opposite sides.
Angolans know the taste of war. And so, after a little more than 20 years of peace, we cannot go back to unrest in this country.
Today is a very important day for the country. It's a day where every citizen must exercise their rights and choose who will lead the country.
Vying for the job, incumbent President João Lourenço, elected in 2017 with 61% of the vote. His formerly Marxist MPLA has ruled Angola since its independence, but is facing unprecedented discontent over the economy. Rival Adalberto Costa Jr. of the main opposition, UNITA, is hugely popular with younger voters.
There has to be a change. The country has to develop because Angolans are having a hard time. There's a lack of jobs. Many young people are unemployed.
In a first, Angolans living abroad are also able to vote. Hundreds lined up to cast their ballots in former colonial power Portugal. With results being compiled and then counted only at a national level, opposition and civil groups are concerned about vote tampering. Angola's National Election Commission insists the count will be fair and transparent, with some 2,000 observers deployed across the country. Still, the opposition called on voters to wait and monitor polling stations after casting their ballots.
Hundreds of South Africans protested in the executive and legislative capitals of Pretoria and Cape Town against inflation that has soared to a 13-year high. The protests were led by the trade union group Congress of South African Trade Unions, a longtime ally of the governing African National Congress.
Hundreds of South Africans protested in Pretoria and Cape Town on Wednesday against inflation. It has soared to a 13-year high. Protesters holding placards saying "Stop taxing basic food items" sang as they marched through central Pretoria towards Union Buildings, which houses President Cyril Ramaphosa's office. Mugwana Maluleki is the Secretary General for South African Democratic Teachers Union.
We cannot continue with this particular high cost of living in our country, whether it's electricity, it's transport, it's food. These things must then be able to stop because our people are suffering.
Labour unrest often affects sectors such as mining during wage negotiations. But it is rare for COSATU, South Africa's biggest union, to lead a national protest. Union officials said more protesters were expected to join the marches as the day progressed. Though it is not immediately clear if a call for a national shutdown to take place in more than 10 major cities would be successful. The Department of Public Service and Administration said in a circular to government departments that state employees participating in the COSATU-led protests would not be paid. South Africa's headline consumer inflation rose to an annual 7.8% in July, its highest level since 2009. Fuel prices were up 45.3% in June, their largest annual increase since the agency's Consumer Price Index series began in 2009.
We have some good news for you. A new study has found that the psychedelic compound psilocybin may help people who struggle with alcohol dependence better manage their drinking. However, the evidence is still in its early stages.
Anyone who knows him would tell you John Costas should be dead by now.
I'd be dead by 30 was a popular number.
Alcohol was killing him. It got an early start.
Probably around 12 was my first drink.
Soon, getting drunk was not enough.
My first AA meeting was at 16.
AA didn't work, nor did any other rehab. Doctors told Costas he was drinking himself to death.
Because even when I stopped drinking, I was miserable.
His last hope, he says, psilocybin, a compound found in psychedelic mushrooms.
I was terrified of psychedelics. I never touched them.
Yet he signed up for a double-blind study with 92 other participants at NYU Langone Health, incorporating psychotherapy and psilocybin. The results very promising. More than 80% who were given the psychedelic treatment drastically reduced their drinking. 48% were completely abstinent 8 months after receiving their first dose.
Their improvement was evident immediately during the month after the first dose of psilocybin.
Dr. Michael Bogenschutz headed the study.
There wasn't really any sign that the effect was diminishing over time. We know that psilocybin can make it possible for the brain to change more than it ordinarily would.
That change is called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to modify, change, and adapt. The theory, the psilocybin makes the brain more malleable. Costas had profound transcendent reactions to the psilocybin.
I saw a liquor bottle in the middle of a desert, and all of a sudden it disintegrates into the sand. And I thought that was pretty obvious symbolism for my alcoholism leaving me.
Welcome back. For more news, let's take you around the world in a minute. The widow of the late basketball star Kobe Bryant was awarded $16 million by a jury over the sharing of photos of human remains at the helicopter crash site where her husband, their 13-year-old Gianna, and 7 others were killed. US President Joe Biden has said the US government will forgive $10,000 in student loans for many debt-saddled college graduates, a move that could boost support for his fellow Democrats in the November congressional elections, but also may fuel inflation. Dinosaur tracks 130 million years old has been exposed in Texas after ongoing drought dried up parts of the river covering them. A whistleblower's complaint that Twitter misled federal regulators about the company's security risks could provide Elon Musk with a fresh ammunition in his bid to get out of buying the company for $44 billion. The Qatar Investment Authority aims to invest $3 billion in Pakistan, lending support to the South Asian nation's cash-strapped economy. Pakistan is in economic turmoil and faces a balance of payments crisis, with foreign reserves having dropped as low as $7.8 billion, barely enough for more than a month of imports. It is also contending with a widening current account deficit, weakening rupee currency, and inflation that exceeded 24% in July. And that's all the news we got for you tonight. Join us again tomorrow for more news from around the globe. If you have missed any of the stories we had tonight, you can rewatch by catching us on our YouTube page, youtube.com/otherderana English. As we leave you tonight, we take a look at a feline-friendly hotel in France. Much as they enjoyed their cat's company during 2 years of coronavirus lockdown, Parisians have enthusiastically taken up travel again, if the reservation register at one Paris cat hotel is anything to go by. At the Cat's Tree Hotel, prospective guests need to reserve well ahead, as all its 24 contemporary and comfortable cubicles are fully booked, although cats who know one another can double up and share a room. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.